Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm Angela, and I am just having the best day because I get to interview person who has such wisdom to share today. Her name is Gail Showalter, and she is passionate about educating and advocating for single mothers. She raised three children as a single mother for 16 years. And after remarrying, her compassion for them remained. And so she defied the odds and founded a nonprofit organization. The nonprofit she founded in 2007 supports single moms who are earning a degree that leads to employment. In Southeast Texas, Gail is known as the old bird with feathers of wisdom for women and a soft spot for single moms. I love that. And her book, Living, Learning, Loving, published by Morgan James Publishing, is available on Barnes and Noble and wherever books are sold. So we'll talk more about that. But first of all, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, Angela, I'm thrilled. I'm happy to be with you.
Yeah, and just tell us a little bit more about your story. That was a very brief bio.
Well, I was one of these lucky people. I just had a wonderful life, I really had a wonderful life. But I had three babies in 3 years. I wasn't planning on that. And I spent an awful lot of time with wet sheets and diapers.
Mm,
But we had come to this area from Houston where my husband was working in the family business. It was going to be great and everything was going to be peachy. And we had built a beautiful home and we had an acre of ground and we had gardeners and I had a company car. And, it was just like idyllic. All right. Until it wasn't.
mm,
And, yeah, there was another woman. It's a typical story. I was home trying to take care of three babies, and he was gallivanting around with her. And so my brother got fed up, fired him, and everything just kind of fell apart.
mm.
Well, if you have the whole picture, this was back in the day. None of my family had ever had a divorce, ever. I know, no one. And so they didn't know what to do. They couldn't believe it. And they didn't know how to help me. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that was pretty much how do you navigate through this? And I do help single moms today if I can in situations. And I still say, as I told you earlier, Angela, it took me years to get to a place where I could look back and say, wow, look how I have grown spiritually and maturely because of those situations.
Mhm.
I don't like it, necessarily, but I mean, I can list things that have happened that never would have happened if I had still been in that particular marriage. And so, whether you call it the universe or the spirit or God, something was directing my life, and it made a huge difference, not only in my life, but in the lives of a lot of other people whose lives I work with today. I'm an old bird. I've been around a while. I've had a lot of challenges and disappointments. I've changed careers. I've had to go back to college. I went back to college with those three little kids.
Mm.
Went from our area 5 hours west to Austin, moved those kids with me, and that is a published story. It was quite an event. And as even today, I look back and I think, did I really do that? Did
Ah,
that really happen? But yeah, I had some motivation that I just wasn't going to sit for years and wallow in a pit of self-pity. I could have. I wanted to. There were days when it was just nothing but one thing after another. I remember one day their daddy said he was going to come to the Little League games. The kids were all in Little League, all three of them. I get home from work and the dog had peed all over the uniforms. And I had like 15 minutes to get them to the ballpark. And their dad was going to be there. I mean, it was just like that. Almost every day there was something to deal with, some kind of challenge, turmoil, crisis, and teaching high school, that's enough crisis right there.
Yeah.
And I'll tell the story later about how that changed. But the thing is, when you're in the middle of it, it's really hard to see your way out. It's really hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I want to encourage your listeners that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, that whatever's happening to you, whether it's grief from death, divorce, or some kind of breakup, or disappointment in a child, a grown child's getting away from the family, which is another sad story that's happening these days. You
Mhm.
know, there's light. There's light at the end of the tunnel. And I just hate seeing people in those situations when there are people out here to help you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and it's interesting you bring up, how you could get through that because I think about my daughter. She has two children that are under the age of two or just she's just over two. And she's so busy and she has a husband. She's not a single mom. How did you get through that? Like what helped you when you look back at it? How did you manage all of that?
Well, I'm going to be the practical side and then the spiritual side. Okay.
Mhm.
The practical side is I rely on a calendar.
Yeah.
I do not try to remember everything. I keep track. And now it's a lot easier because it's all electronic. You can do it on your phone.
Yes.
You can make all the kind of list on your phones or whatever you want. But in those days, I had a calendar on the wall and I would figure out, okay, I got paid once a month and I knew I had to have the groceries that I needed. So I would put one or two words for each menu of the day of the week. This day we'll have chicken, this day we'll have pork or whatever I did. And then I had to, cook. And I did. I had to cook every night because I
Mhm.
didn't go out. I mean, once in a while we got pizza, you know, and once in a while my mom would give us something to eat. But it was a plan. So I always say you got a plan. You can't just let life take you and throw you at the wolves and just go. You have to figure out a plan. And that includes finances, that includes groceries. And for me, laundry. I mean, I used to tease people and say, I'm doing good if I have the kids all have clean underwear on Monday morning,
Yeah.
or lunch money or sandwiches for lunch. I mean, whatever they're doing, I'm doing really good if I'm prepared for Monday morning. So don't beat yourself up, don't kick yourself for simple things that you may not get done. Everything may not be perfect. You may not be able to dust your house every week, and it may, like you would like to. Now, the other side of that is spiritual. For me, um, I spent a lot of time praying, and I have changed a lot of my religious orientation and my association with organized religion and so forth, a whole lot. But I still believe I can pray. And
Mhm.
so I did do a lot of praying and studying too. I read, what other women were dealing with and how they accomplished it, or inspiring stories from women and what they did to get through a situation of grief uh, or disappointment, but there weren't a lot of things written that were hitting where I was. There weren't many books out there at that time. Since then, there have been some books, not a whole lot that I think are just really good, but there are some. There are some good books. And so I did do that. And as I studied, I began to think, well, maybe I could write. And
Mm.
so writing was a good outlet for the feelings I was going through. I'm not like a big journaler, even though I wish I had been. I look back on the years and wish I had kept better journals. But that's one thing I really encourage people to do. I've started the kind where you just do one line a day. It's a 5-year journal, it's a little book, and you put
Yeah.
in one line a day. And usually you don't have enough room for what you want to write, but
Right.
I do it, at bedtime today with the dot. And so now, even a few weeks into it, I can look back and say, okay, this was when we did. And then if I need it for some other purpose to know when certain things happened, it's nice. But I also think it's a real good outlet for when you're hurting and when you're coping with a situation that is taking you off guard.
Hmm.
Maybe rip the rug out from under you. Maybe you've lost a job. Nowadays, a lot of people are losing jobs, and that's a big deal. And
Hmm.
so that could even be that. What do you do? How do you handle that from day to day? And so I think that mostly not being afraid to ask for help is also a big thing. Um, I didn't like asking for help, and I know the single moms that I've worked with don't like to ask for help.
Yeah.
And sometimes they'll put it off and put it off until they have a crisis instead of just asking to begin with. One of my stories is that my son was in the hospital. He almost died with a ruptured appendix. He was 9 years old. And I was in the middle of actually buying my first house, and I had to move everything from one house to this other house. And I had figured out how to pack everything, but I couldn't move the refrigerator myself. And so I mentioned to a lady at the church, I said, I really need some help figuring out how to move this refrigerator. So she goes to her choir practice that night and she tells the people this, and they not only moved the refrigerator, they moved every box I had packed for me.
Oh,
So you
wow.
see, sometimes when you ask for help, people want to help you. They just
Yeah.
don't know what to do.
Hmm.
You have to be willing to ask. And I had to ask. I was put in positions where I didn't really have many choices. And so I think that, even though they may feel uh, stigmatized, they may feel like I should be taking care of this myself. Ask for help. People want to do for you. They do.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you think about how good it feels to help others, then you know
Hmm.
you're giving them an opportunity, right? To feel good. And so if you look at it that way, it's not such a, we think we're burdening someone else, but really it's not.
Yeah, I would have never asked them to move everything.
Yeah, exactly.
But but it just turned out that they really did want to help.
Yeah. Yeah. And how huge. And I mean, I can hear the appreciation, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh boy, I was just thrilled because I didn't know how I was going to manage that. Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, that would be, well, too much.
yeah.
So you managed to move through this and you used the writing to help you, which I really resonate with because that was how I got through my loss as well. It was just writing down everything I was feeling and all the things that I was going through. And it was kind of magical in a way because as soon as I got it down on paper, it just felt like it was releasing for me. For some reason, some of the biggest problems that I couldn't solve, if I could just write about them, somehow they would work themselves through and they wouldn't seem like such big problems anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, they say it's true. What you write with your not type, but what you actually write has an effect on your brain and your way of thinking. And then when you come back to it, even a week later, sometimes the whole thing has changed.
Yeah.
And, it helps you. But sometimes I wrote stories or situations that happened and got published,
Mm.
and that was a thrill too. And so I began to look at life situations as each experience as a learning experience.
Yeah.
What am I going to learn from this? And it's no, that's not fun. It's not fun, but I still try to do that.
Yeah. Well, I think that whole piece of being curious really helps a person because you're not living in the past and lamenting about what happened, and you're not thinking about the future and what you don't know. You're really just being a little bit curious about what could, and I always think about, somebody said to me, instead of thinking about what could go wrong, think about what could go right. That
Yeah,
little piece of, um, little piece of hope that we had that when we were kids, right? Like we used to dream about things that would be
yeah,
amazing to do. And somehow along the way, we kind of lose that curiosity and that willingness to dream about what might be joyful for us.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I did a lot of dreaming too when I was young, till my daddy shook me up and said, "You can't. How are you going to get a job with a degree in theater?
Mm,
You better get a
yeah.
teaching certificate." And he was right, and it's a good thing I did get the teaching certificate, but I have to admit that wasn't my dream.
Right. Yeah.
So, as I look back over my long life, though, I realize he was correct.
Mhm.
And I do as an adult wish that some of my dreams had been directed a little more positively uh, as a kid. And I think parents can do that for their kids. Some people say, well, tell your kids they can be anything they want to be. Nah, I don't
Yeah.
think you tell a kid that. You say, let's look at some things you can do, and let them navigate in that direction. Some
Yeah.
countries, in some parts of the world, when kids get to be ninth, 10th grade, they get to choose a career path.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen here in the US so much, but I know grandchildren I have in Norway, they actually are choosing which direction that they want to work in, even at a 10th grade level. And
Yes.
so I think that's really good because it also gives them a chance to dream, okay, I like this, and then they can get a chance to try it out.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, and I think that's important. Having the opportunity to try things, because I think some kids don't really have an idea what they want to do. Like they did, I found because I was principal at high school, I had kids that just didn't know. They had no idea what they wanted to do, you know, and it just giving them opportunities to find out what things they don't want to do kind of narrows down what they do want to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I could have told you what I didn't want to do. And so,
Hmm.
yeah. But in my day, there weren't that many avenues open for
Yeah.
women. You can teach
Yes.
school, you can be a
Yes.
secretary, you can be a nurse. What
Right.
else?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And my dad was older when he had me, so he was older generation and he saw it a lot differently. However, I did have some really good opportunities and I did have some good jobs. And then ultimately, my final last profession was as a Braille teacher. And I'll tell you some stories about that when you're ready.
Well, getting back to, looking upon your life and, you know, you say that, your father had kind of guided you and directed you to get into education or do something along that line. And so, but you had this desire for theater. Did you ever dabble in it a little bit, or do you go to the theater, or how do you fulfill that need or that dream?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, I was in theater every year from fourth grade through college.
Okay.
And then I got the degree, I got married, and got kind of pulled away from that world. But I taught in a wonderful district outside Houston, had my own drama group, and
Nice.
established a little group, a little traveling group. And we actually performed at Texas Children's Hospital. When I look at that, I'm thinking they would never let me in there today, I don't think, but I was just bold.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just love doing that. And so I did get to do some things with students. And then I also got to teach art, which was my minor, which the college didn't like because they said that's too lopsided. You can't do that. But I
Mm,
did. And so I got to teach art as well. And that led into some other things that I did later with the visually impaired children.
beautiful. Yeah, and these things that we're talking about, the arts and the theater are, well, in writing are really creative outlets for all kinds of emotion and expressing ourselves. And I think they're so important for kids to be able to have those opportunities.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that. I'm a huge fan of the arts, and I hate it when I hear they're cutting this and they're cutting that. It always seems to be the first thing they cut. And I live in a country, part of the country, where football is king.
Mm,
And I mean, literally in Texas, the school here goes to state several times. They've been to state in football.
mm,
And I wanted to have a theater department.
right.
It it just didn't, the administration just didn't see it, you know. And so,
Hmm.
I mean, they did do productions, but and my granddaughter now is in the high school across the street, and she's working in the tech side of the thing and just loves it, and it's really good for her. And there's some evidence. I mean, I've looked at it. There's evidence about what it does for the brain. You know, art is very, very good for the brain because you're doing something with your hands, you're doing something with your vision, you're doing something with your thoughts. Uh, you're perceiving the world differently, maybe, and looking at different angles. So I wrote a handbook on using art with children who are visually impaired, just
Mm,
because I was so driven to see that there's a way even for those children to do art.
yeah.
And so it was really inspiring for me to do, and it was really a reward to see it published. The American Printing House for the Blind published it. Well, they put it in their catalog for 20 years until just
Oh,
last year. Yeah.
wow. That's
But
amazing.
because, art is just, it should be a part of everybody's life at some level.
Yeah.
But I was interested in it from the get-go. I mean, from the time I was little. I we used to make puppets in the backyard and get a big cardboard box and do puppet plays, and I would direct the plays. And, that was my life, and I loved it. But it didn't work out so well as an occupation, so I have to
Mm,
confess that.
yeah.
And but there were avenues I could have taken if I had chosen, but it wasn't possible after a divorce with three little kids, even in a school district. There was no way I could direct two big productions a year. I couldn't
Right.
do it.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. And wow, there's so much I could say about this because I'm a huge advocate for the arts and expression. And I really think that when you were talking about the cuts, that really hit a chord with me because I think that's a big part. And I have no proof to back this up. But I would say that suppressing the arts and not allowing students to find different ways to express themselves has actually contributed to the mental health problem that we have
yes,
hugely.
yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
there's no outlet. They don't have those outlets.
Mhm. Yeah.
And it is an outlet, it gives them a way, even if you don't like what they're producing. I mean, my kids, my students used to do all of this bones and skeletons and blood and everything. And I said, okay, they did a drawing each week, a weekly drawing. Okay. And I told them, I says, okay, once every grading period, you can do one of those. The rest of the time, give me something else because I get tired of looking at the blood and guts. But they had those opportunities,
Yeah.
and that's just drawing. That's not even all of the other avenues,
Yeah. Yeah.
the
Well, and I
music and
even
the
feel like,
drama and
yeah. Yeah. And
the
cooking
sculpting
class.
and oh yeah. Now they have that here now. They have a
Nice.
whole they have a culinary teacher, which we never had. I thought, wow, that is cool, That's really
Yeah.
great.
And people think that those classes are fluff, they're not important, they're not rigorous, but oh my goodness, if people understood, and after going through what I went through and the ways that I was able to express myself through my own. And I mean, nobody's seen the drawings I made or the journaling I did or any of that stuff or the singing that I did in my house just by myself. The humming, the drumming, the all the stuff that I did to express myself and help myself move through this grief. You need that. You need that avenue. And if we aren't taught to express ourselves, we kind of lose it. We forget how to do it.
Yeah, this morning, right before I got on, I moved all of my sewing materials back into my dining room. I had had guests for 2 weeks, so I'd taken everything out of the dining room. And this morning, I'm moving all my things back to the, and I can't wait to start sewing again. That
Yeah.
was another thing I did in theater. Is in college, I was paid to make costumes. And, that's another way. It's mental health. It
Yeah.
really is. And
It
I
really,
know that the psychiatrists know this now, that
mm,
it's mental health to do something creative with your hands, you
yeah,
know?
absolutely. Yeah. So tell me more about your books.
Well, the book that's just come out is called Living, Learning, Loving. And
Mm,
it's 12 chapters of insights and encouragement for women going through motherhood. And it's personal stories. I'm a very transparent person. I may regret it someday, but I tell my stories, and each book, each chapter rather, has questions at the end that are kind of thought-provoking questions to help you if you want to answer questions about this topic. And it goes from solitude to boundary setting to personality types, because I trained as a personality specialist years ago, and money, and then having fun with your children.
yeah.
You should make a point of having fun with your children. Uh, Statistics will tell you that they will remember that when they forget everything you've said. They're going to remember those fun experiences.
Right.
And then I have a chapter on prayer, another chapter on the things I learned from teaching children with visual impairments. And I've got all those stories, the things I learned from those kids. They were great. They're great. And so it kind of goes through the gamut, covers a lot of topics, but every chapter is a personal story. And I'm basically a storyteller. So I'm just used that and real excited about the book being out. And I don't
Yeah.
have a copy that I can show you yet because they're shipping them right now.
Yeah, but that's exciting. And I mean, this won't air for a little bit, but once it does, they'll definitely be out by then. And
Oh,
so,
they can order it now. Yeah. I
yeah.
just, I just don't have my copies.
Yeah. That's amazing. And how do people find you? And what do you offer?
They can find me so easily. It's Gail Showalter, Gail Showalter.com. I'm on everything, a little bit of me here and there. And I have a good website they can go to and get to. There's some free downloads on there. Some of
Okay.
the published stories that have been around a while, they're, I think, still good stories, and they can download them individually. Is also a booklet, which is a compilation of editorials for the newspaper that I wrote, called ABCs of Wisdom. And they can download that from that website. And I'd be happy to hear from anyone that's interested in doing things or creating a nonprofit specifically to help single moms get through college. I
Mm,
really think we need to turn that around and help these women help themselves. They want to, they just
yeah.
need a hand up.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. What a great cause. Do you have any? Well, I know you have lots of wisdom, but what would you like to share with the listeners that you think might help?
Well, we talked about it a little earlier, but mostly don't be afraid to ask for help.
Mm,
Also, have a calendar, keep track, and not just keep track of money, but keep track of your time, what you need to be doing. One thing, now I don't know who the listeners may have little children, they may have high school children or older children. When my children were school age, we would put a day on the calendar that was their special day. Each child had one day and over a period of time. And so on that day, they knew, they got to know in advance, so they could look forward to it. And they knew that just the two of us were going to go out and do something together.
Yeah.
And it wasn't going to involve buying clothes or shoes or something. It was going to involve being together, especially if you have more than one child. They need that time with you. And I wish that I had done it more than I did it.
Mm.
But we did, and that's something that I always encourage to do. And I also encourage moms to sit down at the dinner table and have a meal together with your children because statistics are showing that the families who have a meal together at least once a week, those children do better in school, they take drugs less, they're better adjusted, and several other criteria. But they have proven this that eating a meal together with family is valuable. And at some families, that's the only time you can get everybody together is just to sit down and have a meal, not a TV dinner, a meal, you know, not in front of the TV, not with the handheld devices, but together. And then maybe have a little tradition. We have a tradition at our house where everybody shares something they learned that day. And it usually stimulates conversation. And we try to stay away from politics and things. But yeah, those are the things I suggest basically over and over to single moms.
Yeah. And there's so much wisdom in that, and I think maybe we've lost sight of a lot of that because life has gotten really busy and really complicated. And some of these simple things, like just having a meal together once a week, if it can make that big of a difference, it's
Hmm.
not that hard to implement, right? And I think very, very wise, very wise.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for taking the time today to do this. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Angela. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. And thanks everyone for listening, and bye for now.